All right, everyone, we got a couple brand new Switch stories that we got to talk about today, starting with a 13-minute gameplay overview trailer of Pokemon Legends Arceus, and it definitely revealed a lot that we did not know about the game up to this point in time, so we got to break it down and cover it here and share my overall hype levels for this game, as this game will be out late January and it is a day one pickup for me. Then we also have to cover the reason why the 2022 leaked lineup for the Nintendo Switch games are making the rounds again, as there's actually a couple different sources that this is stemming from, and I want to break it all down for you, go over it, and share my personal opinion on what games I do actually think we can expect in the year of 2022 to hit the Nintendo Switch. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. And as I mentioned, guys, we got a couple different stories to go over here today, and the first of which that we got to kick it off with is Nintendo finally dropping a large overview trailer for Pokemon Legends Arceus, as we got 13 minutes of total gameplay, all focused around a lot of different mechanics in the game, some of which we knew, a lot of which we didn't know, and we definitely got a deeper dive into this. I would encourage you guys to actually take the time, if you do have it, to watch the whole trailer yourself after this video, so I will have it linked under the sources section in the description down below in case you do want to check out the entire thing. But we saw a ton of different incredible moments, most notably boss battle style encounters with very large Pokemon that actually have like a legit health bar, and that got me super excited because you know I like a little bit of challenge in my games, and I definitely have been feeling like the Pokemon formula has been getting a little bit stale for me recently, and this is the change up that I think the series needs. You then also of course see a lot of the stealth elements highlighted as you are trying to create a Pokedex for the first time in the Hisuian region, and I just think this is going to set up for a great story. I know it's not exactly the Breath of the Wild of Pokemon, as it is definitely looking to be more like a Monster Hunter style game with how you get a specific objective and then you go complete it and you kind of come back to your hub world. So while it's not a full open world experience, we have not seen this kind of open travel in a Pokemon game. And speaking of travel, we also see some very smooth transitions from riding on your Pokemon on the land right into the sky, and then of course you can ride on surf on Pokemon on water as well, and all of it just really looks great, smooth. And I know there's been a lot of debate around the graphical style of this game, because you can argue that it doesn't look the best in terms of even comparing it to Breath of the Wild and the world that they created back in 2017, that maybe it's not the highest graphical fidelity. I will tell you guys personally, the graphics do not bother me one bit. I am more excited for the core gameplay mechanics that are highlighted in this trailer, and I can't wait to get a shakeup for the series, because it did kind of hit me when I was playing through Shining Pearl this time around that about 15 to 20 hours into the game, I was actually starting to kind of force myself to play it, as I just ultimately ended up kind of feeling like I was hitting the A button over and over when I got my team kind of established. And I know that may make some of the hardcore Pokemon fans upset, but as somebody who has played the mass majority of the titles, but of course got out of some of them over the years, because when you couldn't play the DS titles on a TV, that kind of took me out of it. I was like Game Boy generation, and then went right back to it at the end of the DS era. I did with the 3DS XL go ahead and play through some of the more recent ones, but I definitely skipped out on some of the series. And while I do enjoy playing these games again on the Switch, I think I am fully ready for a new experience at this point in time, and this is what that is. So personally for me, it is the Pokemon game I've been waiting for years and years. A couple other things to quickly mention that we saw in the trailer is, of course, you do have specific missions. So there was a point highlighted where you had to go capture one specific Pokemon so you could study it, and then there's going to be different rewards based off of which missions you're going after and things like that. And I don't know how big this land is overall, but from everything they're showcasing is in the trailer, it looks massive, and it looks big enough and close enough to an open world experience Pokemon game that I just personally am ready for it. You also, of course, have the strong style and then also swift style attacks, which do come with advantages and disadvantages, and you're going to have to use them strategically, because if you do use strong style and the Pokemon actually can withstand that attack, apparently they have a much higher chance of attacking you back twice in a row before you can get off another attack. So there's a lot of interesting things to unpack here. I definitely like the fast action dodge roll. Like, that's a huge mechanic that you guys will probably know I am a fan of if you've been around on the channel for a while, as as it's just one of those things for me that adds the surprise element, kind of gets your heart elevated if you're trying to sneak up on a very large Pokemon, especially the Red Eyes Pokemon that I can't remember off the top of my head what they called those, but essentially a Pokemon that's enraged. Like, it's a dangerous encounter and you may actually die and lose items if you do die, and I don't think it's like a harsh penalty by any means, but that's an exciting new gameplay mechanic for me when you talk about Pokemon games, because I think that's one of the things that has started to take me out of it over the course of times is that I don't really have a fear of death, unless, you know, maybe the Elite Four, you know, they might take out your entire team, because that's definitely a harder battle at the end. But if you kind of know the types and how to structure your team, there's really not too much threat, and I definitely hope that the challenge is here with this, and I definitely hope that some of the largest, most legendary Pokemon that you have to go find are legitimately hard boss encounters, like with a health bar to get them down before you can capture them. So for me personally, I couldn't be more hyped for this game to drop on January 28th. I know not everybody here on the channel is a huge Pokemon fan, but I want to hear from you specifically if you're not, or maybe you're kind of like me where you are a Pokemon fan but you're just getting a little bit tired of the formula, what you think about this direction. Or maybe you're somebody who you're glad that it's kind of going in an open world direction but let down by the fact that it's not the true Breath of the Wild, go explore and do whatever you want with no mission structure whatsoever. So I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below on all things Pokemon Legends Arceus and what you think about this now that we have this 13-minute overview trailer, and definitely share with me whether or not you will be purchasing this game at release on January 28th in the comments down below. Now, the other story we're talking about today is a rather large update around a discussion that we recently had on the channel, which has to do with potentially Nintendo's 2022 lineup being leaked. And there's actually two different sources I want to reference in today's video, so make sure you stick around for both of them. But the first update we have to talk about that is making the rounds online is Mr. New Markomaro over on Twitter. And you all may remember that in my 2022 Leaks Explained video that I really disagreed with New Markomaro specifically on his leaked list, purely for the fact that I was trying to point out that a lot of the titles that he was listing as part of his leaked 2022 lineup was previously reported upon from other gaming industry insiders or gaming journalists that have a name attached to their reputation and is not just an anonymous Twitter user that we really have no clue, other than a few things coming right over the course of time, that they actually have any inside connections, or if there's somebody who's just watching the rumor mill and Nintendo news cycles very closely, and that's where they're getting their kind of predictions from. So the reason Markomaro is back in the news is he did tweet out on January 4th that Kirby and the Forgotten Land looks like it's set for a March 25th release, and Advance Wars would be April 8th. Now, Advance Wars was an easy prediction to make because there was previously a data mine leak that suggested that the eShop had it listed for April 8th, if I'm not mistaken. That's kind of why everybody dismissed that date. But of course, we did get the official confirmation that Kirby and the Forgotten Land will indeed be coming out on March 25th, and so a lot of people are now looking again at this leaked list, potentially thinking that he does indeed have an insider, some kind of connection with Nintendo marketing, that, you know, maybe he knows stuff about the 2022 lineup that hasn't been announced so far. And what I will tell you guys is my personal stance on this is that it can go either way. It's a 50-50 coin flip. That's either a very lucky guess that he called out exactly March 25th, or it's something that he does legitimately have a contact and has limited or some information. But I still think with these leakers that don't have a name tied to them whatsoever, that even if you have one or two things right, you may be making the rest of your prediction list just off of rumor mill stuff or stuff that's actually come out from other industry insiders, and you're kind of trying to spin it off as your own information. That's kind of where I still land on this. It's also highly debatable that, you know, March 25th is the end of Nintendo's fiscal year, or the end of March will be rather, and it might be the last date that makes sense to put out a big game like Kirby, since we knew it was a spring title. But regardless, you have to give credit where credit is due, and I will say that before I believe anybody else really tweeted that out, New Markomaro did claim that March 25th would be Kirby's release date, and of course that did come true. So maybe take it with a pinch of salt, maybe we will revisit his list, but I still am not sold that really most of the things on there are actually coming from him at all. I then want to pivot the conversation to a recent Nate the Hate podcast that actually just went live today. I will have the full video linked in the description down below, as it is a very great long form listen in terms of Nate and MVG going over their personal predictions, and they are branding them as predictions in this video, but of course they are referencing a lot of the inside connections, specifically Nate the Hate state that he has had a great track record over the course of time, and I think people personally need to somewhat pay attention to him. Obviously, plans change and nobody has a perfect track record with everything, but most recently we had him going out of his way to say that the Assassin's Creed, the Ezio collection would come, and I believe he tweeted that out back in December 4th from his direct feed games account. And of course, we got that announcement just the other day, and we covered it here on the channel that is indeed a real thing and it is set for release. So he obviously has some insiders in the industry or just game developer friends that you would make over the course of time if you report on things like video games. Prior to that, on September 15th, he had a podcast that suggested that Nintendo would be planning the N64 as an additional console to NSO service, and he was kind of the first one to pose it out there that this would most likely be a higher subscription tier. And of course, what did we see with the expansion pack shortly after at the September Direct later that month? We did of course get that confirmation that it was part of a higher pricing tier. Now, whether or not that was inside information, you can debate on one side or the other, because there was a lot of talks leading up to that point that we could see something like N64, but there was a ton of naysayers that said it will never happen, Nintendo's not going to add that system to NSO, and Nate went out of his way to say that that is in the plans, and that we know that some of the emulators that were in the data code for the Nintendo Switch that have been data mined actually support N64 emulation. So all of that said about Nate the Hate and what he has said so far with Nintendo plans specifically, I want to share with you guys a breakdown of what went down in this podcast today, because he's definitely referencing some previous leaks and rumors that you can actually trace back to him, or him corroborating when another industry insider has gone out of their way to say it's a real project. He will then come in and back that up. So to read through and to kind of kick off this conversation, I want to hop over to our Gaming Leaks and Rumors, where they compile all of the different time codes where these games come up. And again, this is a predictions list. I don't want to put him out there saying that he's leaking all these titles, but he's definitely referencing his knowledge that these projects are in the works, and certain ones calling them out that they've either been delayed or maybe pushed back further into 2023 in some cases. So let's read through the quick list together and then have a quick discussion around which titles I'm personally expecting the most to happen in 2022 as we look at Nintendo Switch's lineup. Nate the Hate, Fire Emblem 2022 and Remake, plus more info on Switch titles plus Persona. At 28 minutes in the podcast, HD remaster of Metroid Prime will be in the second half of 2022, as it is the 20th anniversary since original release on the GameCube and can see Nintendo positioned as a headliner in the holiday season. Timestamp 29, Xenoblade Chronicles is delayed internally. That can fall into 2023 due to the virus and technical issues. Could still release in 2022 as the game needs to sort out technical issues. At the 35-minute timestamp in the podcast, new Fire Emblem is coming in 2022 from the Three Houses devs, and it sounds very exciting with better graphics and mechanics. Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War Remake will not come in 2022, more likely 2023. At timestamp 5020 mentions that a DK game is in development but can't get information on the game, like if it is 2D or 3D or what the game is about other than it's in development. At 54 minutes, he believes that House of the Dead is coming out in March. 54:13, Nate is led to believe that Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope will come out in early 2023, but it may make it in the second half of 2022, but based on things he's heard, it's unlikely. 56:53, Resident Evil Outrage, a multiplayer game, is no longer a project and was meant for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. He mentioned this last year and reaffirms this again. 56:50, the Nintendo Switch Resident Evil game is Revelations 3. Unsure if it is in development due to how hard and difficult to get information on the project recently. At 59, he believes that Persona 4 Golden will make its way onto Switch and PlayStation in 2022. 59:55 states that which I would anticipate that Persona 6 is announced as a PlayStation 5 exclusive. Doesn't elaborate further, sounds like it'll be announced later in the Persona anniversary. 107:48, Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters coming to Switch in 2022, yes by Nate and MVG. Throughout the podcast, a February Direct is slung a few times around, but doesn't sound like a sure thing. Now that's kind of a Cliff Notes roundup of some of the stuff they talked about on there, but I would definitely highly recommend you guys to go listen to the podcast when you can. I will have it linked in the description down below under the sources section, so make sure you hop over there and show some support because it is a great listen through and through. MVG has fantastic knowledge when it comes to game development and things like that, as he is a game developer himself and he knows how those things work in and out, and he's friends with a lot of different game developers. That's what happens when you work in that kind of industry. And then Nate the Hate, as I mentioned, has been friends with a lot of these different different studios over the course of time and has leaked various different projects. So I tend to believe things like this more than an anonymous Twitter account that, you know, sometimes gets things right and sometimes doesn't, but also puts a full compilation list as their own when a lot of those leaks were already out there prior to them suggesting that they were in the works. And you can say that Metroid Prime Trilogy HD was supposed to be the leaked thing, not Metroid Prime 1, but they have clarified that when everybody thought that Retro Studios, or had heard rather, that Retro Studios was working on a Metroid Prime project for the Switch, everybody assumed it was Trilogy HD. Emily Rogers said that, and then she went and corrected herself and said that in fact it's actually just a Metroid Prime 1 remake, or just maybe even remaster. Like, it might not be remade from the ground up, it may just be very highly cleaned up when it comes to the visual department. But supposedly the plan is now to release these individually, or at least Metroid Prime 1 is what we are getting, and the other two games don't sound guaranteed at this point. Then Nate the Hate, of course, backed that up. I do personally believe that a lot of the list that they talk about is highly likely in 2022. I want to hear from you guys on what titles you would be most hyped for that they talked about. And there's also some discussion in there about potentially a 3D Mario hitting this year alongside the movie, and even maybe Breath of the Wild 2 being pushed back to 2023. And while I don't think that may be the case, like, we might get a 3D Mario, but you have to keep in mind, if we get Metroid Prime 1 remake, 3D Mario, and Breath of the Wild 2 all in the same year, like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So maybe something does slide around, and maybe that's even how we get the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD ports over, is if Breath of the Wild 2 does go into 2023 rather. But regardless of where you fall and all that stuff, I just think it's very exciting to talk about and present the information, because, you know, things change in companies at the end of the day. We're still navigating a real world pandemic. There's going to be a lot of things that either happen or don't happen, but it's a lot of fun, in my opinion personally, to break down the information we do know and talk about what we can most likely expect. And I will tell you guys that out of the list of those games, Breath of the Wild 2 is definitely my most hyped title for 2022, but I will say that Metroid Prime 1 Remake is right up next to it, and I just can't wait personally for Nintendo to actually drop that title and reveal it. But at this point in the video, guys, I do want to hear from you on where you land on all these issues we talked about. What do you think about new Marco Maro now that he's gotten that exact March 25th release date? Do you think that his list actually came from him directly, or do you kind of, you know, side with me where it may just be a little bit more prediction based off things that were already out there? And what do you think of Nate the Hate and the podcast overall, and whether or not you think that some of his predictions in this podcast will indeed come true, or if you just think that it's something that is less likely to happen and we're maybe not getting that Metroid Prime 1 remake at all, because that would be devastating to me. But I definitely am holding out hope that we will see it happen. So as I mentioned, I want to hear from you on all the different stories we talked about today, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. I do truly appreciate you all sticking around until the end. I do at this point in the video want to invite you all one more time to join Sunbro Nation if you haven't done so already. Do so by subscribing below, hit the like button on your way out if you enjoyed it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. That's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you all have a great day. Sunbro Nation, out.